You want.
My name is Bob Overholt, and I'm here with Ira Prescott, and we're going to have a conversation about some of the things that have happened in Irv's life over the years that he's been on the earth, and he's had a lot of experiences, and some of them are interesting, some of them are funny, but they're all important and all of them are significant. So I hope you'll enjoy the little video we're going to make right now, and when I share it with Irv after we get it made, we'll see whether it's satisfactory to him. But in the meantime, he and I are going to sit down and we're just going to chat about things that are relative to his life, his family, his things that he's done in the community, people he knows, and anything else that we can come up with that might be of interest to other people. Well, Irv, the first thing I'd like to have you do is tell me a little bit about your background, from where you're from, and how you got to Ludington, and the people that were influential in getting you here.
Well, I was born in Chicago, Illinois, 1922, and went to public school in Chicago, both elementary and high school. Day after I graduated from high school, I got a job at the First National Bank. Thought that would be a nice place to work. Well, it was a nice place to work, but the pay was rather slim, $65 a month for 6 days a week.
Not much.
So anyway, I decided after a year and a half there that I would go to college. So I went to North Park College, which was in Chicago on the north side. It was a small Swedish Covenant Church school. So it was very strict in certain ways. You never saw a cigarette butt on the grounds anywhere, and that was interesting. Well, anyway, I went to that school, and I could only stay 3 years because it was a junior school, junior academy.
Similar to our community college
Right,
today.
but I could stay, but it was private. It wasn't a public school. It wasn't put on by the city. It was a private school by the church. And I could stay for 3 years in music. So along comes 1941, 42, and my brother, Vernon, who was 4 years older than I, he went into the service in the summer of 1941. And in the fall of 1941, I was going to college at North Park, and I was had a quartet, and we were way on the south side of Chicago, and in a church, giving a concert. And lo and behold, the minister walked up the aisle and he said, "May I interrupt?" Yes. Pearl Harbor Day.
Oh, December the 7th,
That was December 7th,
1941.
1941. So, that was a turning point in everybody's life. Well, I kept on going to school. But then in 1942, in October, I decided I was going to go and enlist in the Air Force. I'd like to be a pilot.
Yeah.
So I went to the Federal Building where our reserve was, and I took all the exams, passed them by the skin of my teeth. Got into the Air Force, and
You need to tell about that little story about the recruiter and what happened with you, with your weight.
Yeah, when I got there, I only weighed 119 pounds. And he said, "I can't take you, kid, because you got to weigh at least 120. He said, "Do you really want to be in the service in the Air Force?" I said, "Yes, I do." He said, "Well, go over to Union Station. They've got a big concession stand there, and get a couple of Hershey bars, those big ones, the dollar ones. Eat them. And then they have bananas. Eat a couple of bananas." So he said, "Come back at 1 o'clock. And I came back at 1 o'clock and I weighed 121.
Well,
And
he also told you not to do something else before you came back.
Well, I wouldn't mention that. But anyway, I got into the Air Force that way. Then I graduated. When I came back out of the Air Force, I went back to school at North Park for 1 more year, then transferred to Northwestern University in Evanston for my final year of school, and was graduating in June of 1949. And 2 days before we were to graduate, my telephone at my folks' house rang. It was a man named Oliver DeYoung, and he introduced himself as the superintendent of schools in Ludington, Michigan. Was I interested in being a high school choir director up there? I said, gee, I don't know, I've never heard about this. How'd you get my, I sent it to Northwestern for looking for somebody, and they sent me your name. And I said, well, yes, but can I have a day to think about it? Yes. I said, may I be bold enough to ask what the salary might be? Oh yes, $2,600 for the year. Oh, okay, thank you.
How was that money-wise compared to today?
I'll call you back tomorrow. I'll let you know when I'm going to take it. Well, 2 or 3 other fellows had already graduated and taken jobs right here in Michigan, and they were only making $27.50 going to Detroit. For $2,600, I'll go to Ludington.
Yeah, okay, that was a good reason to
So
come here.
I called him up, told him, yes, I'll take the job. He said, come up Labor Day weekend, and I'll have located a place for you to live. And I'll take you around the schools and show you what you have to do, and give you a key to the building, and you're on your own. So that's what I did. I came here to direct the high school choir, and I was supposed to be supervising the elementary school music teachers, because all those teachers at that time taught their own music. They did not have a traveling teacher in music, no, or the arts, either one. So I came and I visited with all the elementary school teachers and spent some time in each building every week. And that's how I got to Ludington, and I liked it so well after I got here, and I stayed with the high school choir for 18 some years. And then Mr. Baldwin, who was the superintendent then, said, how would you like to become principal? Oh, that sounds pretty good. He said, pay a couple $100 a year more than what job you got now. And so I became the principal of Foster School, Pere Marquette School, Summit School, Nordau School.
All those?
Yeah. And Dick Wickland was the principal of South Hamlin, and Franklin was Wally Ludwig.
I knew Wally.
I was the principal of the rest of those schools. Well, then, as soon as I got to Ludington, I discovered that the wife of the present band director, Bob McEmber, his wife, she was directing the Methodist Church Choir here in town. And I was invited there to sing a solo on a Sunday. And the lady that was in charge of that said to me, well, if you're going to come and sing on Sunday, why don't you come and rehearse with the organist on Thursday night at choir, and be in choir practice, and sing the choir with us too. Well, I did, but there was something in the evening that disturbed the choir director, and she got mad and she resigned the job. She resigned the job. And I became the choir director the next week. And that was a high-paying job. I got $15 a month for directing the Methodist Church Choir. But I finally got it up to, by the time I stayed about 20 years with that, I got it up to $50 a month.
That was a big
Yeah,
deal.
that was a big deal. Yeah.
Well, what about Alice? Where did she come into play with your time here, and when you met her, and how did you court her and get married?
That was rather interesting, because even though I went to music school, I never was very good with the keyboard. And the first year I had the high school choir, I said, which one of you gals and here your boys played would like to be the accompanist? Alice Benedict raised her hand, she said, I would. I said, you're on. So because of that, her parents were interested in it too, because her brother was a clarinet player, and he was also a school teacher down in Muskegon. And so the first concert I did, they of course came, the parents did, and next Sunday they invited me over to the house for dinner. Well, one thing led to another, and the year after she graduated in 1950, we got married in 1951, in June of 1951. That's how that came about. We stayed married 60 years.
That's pretty doggone good in this day and age. You know, it's kind of funny. I've been down at the House of Flavors off and on several times, and I usually sit in that back new addition that they put on the east side of the building.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a large picture there. Joe Clark is in it, and I can't think of it.
Roland Benedict.
Roland Benedict. He's in that same picture with Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And I've told several people that I've been down there having lunch with that he was your father-in-law.
Right.
And that was these guys were both pretty young then too. I mean, comparatively, you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess he probably would have been in his 50s.
Yeah.
Probably about.
Joe was probably a little younger, I think.
Maybe. But well, it would have been. Roland was born in 1901, so he was 19.
So he was a little older. Well, let's see. Joe might have been born about 1910. I don't know. I knew Joe quite well because he was on the city commission with me.
Yeah.
Well, when did you and Alice get married? 1951?
1951, we got married.
Where did you go for your honeymoon?
We went to Manistee for the first night in the hotel. Then the next day we went to Sault Ste. Marie, Mackinac Island, stayed there. Then we went over to Banff, and eventually wound up going across and coming down through Georgian Bay to Tobermory, Canada. And we finally wound up at Niagara Falls.
Well, that's a long hike.
That's a long haul. We wound up at Niagara Falls. Then we went from there to London, Ontario, where I had my father's brother and his wife lived. I had aunt and uncle in Ontario, in London.
That's a nice community
And
too.
we stayed there for a couple of nights with them, and then we came on home to Ludington. And at the time, in the summertime, I worked at Barnett's gas station, which is next door to the old Methodist church, 7 days a week at the gas station, except on Sundays I quit at 10 o'clock and went to the church and directed the choir.
Well,
So I kept busy. I needed to keep busy because all the jobs I had were quite small.
Well, yeah, between your teaching job and your job as choir director at the church, plus Barnett's, did it give you enough to start a home and so forth?
Well, we did. We rented a place for the first year, and by the end of that year, a house at 811 East Foster Street came up for sale. It was an old house, but we went and looked at it, and Mr. Elliott was a real estate agent.
Is that Dave Elliott?
David Elliott. He was a real estate agent, and we were living in his apartment on Washington Avenue, Brother Street. And I said, we're thinking about buying the house over on Foster Street, but we don't know anything about buying a house. Would you come over and look at it? He didn't have it for sale. Somebody else had it for sale. Well, yeah, I'll do that for you. So we took him over, and he went in the front room, and the furniture was all, the house was completely empty. He walked into the front room, jumped as high as he could, and landed as hard as he could on both feet. Okay, went upstairs, did the same thing, buy it.
That's all the criteria he used for
That's
buying
all
the
he
house?
did, told me
He
to
wanted
buy
to make
it.
sure it was a solid structure.
Mm-hmm. And the house cost $7,200. So I got a mortgage for 6% and bought it.
You know, Dave Elliott was one of the really premier people that I first met when we came here. He was in the real estate business, and he helped find us a place to live over on Robert Street.
Mm-hmm.
Honest to the, you couldn't find anybody more honest in the real estate business than Dave. And he was really a fine gentleman. I liked him a lot, and I'm sure you found him to be truthful and so forth too. Did he go through the house with you as far as the heating and other stuff?
Well, we walked down the basement, which was an old beat up basement. It had one of those great big round tin covered stoves, burned coal.
Coal burner.
Coal burner, and We burned coal in it for only about 3 months, and then we changed to oil.
Okay.
Changed to oil. Well then, about the summer of 1956 is when natural gas was coming to Ludington, and I needed a job in the summer. I didn't want to work at the gas station anymore.
Yeah.
So I went to see Louis Shower, and Louis Shower was big in a gas company. I said, Louis, got anything I can do this summer? He said, no, but the pipeline's coming through town, why don't you go out and talk to the guy about it? So I did. I went out where they were working, and I forget his name right at the minute, but he was a huge man, and I said, you the boss of the pipeline? He said, yep, I own it. And I said, well, I'm looking for a summer job because I teach school, and I need a job for the summer. Oh, he said, let me see your hands. I showed him my hands, and the fingernails were clean, and he said, you don't want to work for us. You're going to be all calluses and dirty in 2 weeks. I said, that's okay. So I did real well. I worked 10 hours a day for the pipeline, and I made more in the summer than I did all year teaching school.
Really?
Working for the pipeline, yeah.
Well, that was a big supplement for you
Oh,
and
it
Alice
was,
to
yeah.
have for your home that you had just purchased and so forth.
Yeah, so I did that for 2 summers. I worked for the second summer for them too. And it was kind of an interesting thing because these fellows that worked in the pipeline were kind of a tough crew. And a lot of them come from Tennessee and Arkansas and wherever. And they kind of wanted to give me the business. So he said, you're a school teacher, what do you do? I said, well, I usually teach a voice. I mean, you think you're a singer? Well, I said, yeah. Well, it rained one day and we were in the old gas company place and they had a coal pile in there. They said, if you can sing, go up on the coal pile and sing. And I did. And I sang Old Man River up on the coal pile. They never bothered me after that the rest of the year. I was one of them.
They accepted you when they knew you had a skill that none of them had.
So I had a good time with the pipeline.
Oh, nice.
They were a rough bunch. They were a very rough bunch. They worked hard, and I became what was a rather interesting job. I was a welder's helper because every section of pipe had to be welded together, and then it had to be covered over with tar and some wrapping paper, and I had to run that tar wagon and put the hot tar on, and so that's what I did with the pipeline, along with digging ditches.
That's why you wanted to know if your hands were okay, and you could take that kind of work.
Yeah, and then on Saturday and Sunday, when the pipeliners were gone, I checked all the places where we had holes in the ground, we were working on this, made sure the lanterns were on all night so people didn't fall in or have an accident. So I worked 7 days a week.
And you made more money than you made in the whole year of teaching school.
Right, and the church choir besides.
Plus that.
That didn't amount to much, to $20 a month that was $240 a year.
Well,
But that's okay.
That was okay.
I don't have no complaints. It's been a good life here in Ludington, and I've been here since 1949, so that's quite a few years now.
Yeah, well, it's 50, 60, 65, 60, 66 years.
At least.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell me a little bit about your family, your children, and what they are doing perhaps today and so forth.
Well, I have three children, Paul Prescott and Brenda, his wife. They live with me here now in my house in Ludington because Alice has passed away and I needed some care, and so they simply moved up here with me.
And don't forget Teddy.
And Paul is a shop manager at Anderson Technologies in Grand Haven, and that's where they do plastic molding, plastic injection molding. And he's the supervisor of all 3 shifts, and drives down and back every day of the week, and and they have their dog Teddy that's here, and we have a pretty good time together. And so my daughter, she lives over in Wisconsin Rapids, and her husband's a medical doctor. He's been in the practice for some 15 years now. He practiced up in Onaway for a while and decided that he could make it a little better, and so he moved to Wisconsin. They offered him a good job in Wisconsin. And the oldest boy, Jack, he was in insurance here in town. He worked for Smith and Eddy downtown there. And that wore out after a while, and he got a job with the Kinder Morgan gas pipeline company.
That's a big company too.
It's one of the biggest in the country.
Yeah.
And he's been with them now for probably 12 years or more. And they did a 800-mile pipeline from California into North Dakota, and he had one section of that he was an overseer of. He had to see to it that everything was done right. He didn't do it, but he had to see that it was done.
Well, didn't he have to go out and also purchase rights to the property?
Well, he did that. He went out and got the rights to the people and made them an offer for so much money.
X number of dollars.
And I was amazed one day when he came home and he said, "I just wrote a check for $500,000. I said, "What do you mean you wrote it?" Well, he said, "That's what I have. I was able to get the property that we needed for this pipeline, and that's what they wanted. So we paid it. It's going to make money for the gas pipeline along the road anyway." So now he's out in Pennsylvania. He's been in Ohio, Pennsylvania twice, and that's where he is now. Near Scranton, Pennsylvania. They're doing a new pipeline out there, and he's had some interesting things with what they call the tree huggers.
Oh,
The
yeah.
environmentalists don't want the pipeline. They got to climb up a tree and tell us you can't go through here. So he just calls the state police, and they come and take him out of the tree, and that's the end of it.
And he goes through.
Yeah. I said, "Why don't you just cut the tree down?" "Well, no, we can't do that with them up there."
No, he can't do that.
No.
But the police can get him down.
Yeah, the police got him down. So he's had an interesting time. He's
Well, all
63
three of your
years
children
old.
have been productive, hardworking people and successful in what they've done in their lives.
Yeah, they've been okay. Yeah, that's right.
You know, you grew up, you were born in 22, so you saw the beginning of the Depression in 1929.
I sure did.
How did that affect your family in Chicago, and what did your father do? Because you've told me in the past that he never even had a driver's license, could drive a car. Would you elaborate on that?
Well, my father was rather interesting. He was very agile at the work he did. He was an asbestos worker. Covered pipes, big tall chimneys like you'd see at a power plant. Line those with magnesium block, go down on a bosun's chair inside of that chimney and reline it. He could go 80, 90 feet in the air and walk along on a ladder or a scaffold and think nothing of it. But he never could ride a bicycle.
He couldn't ride a bicycle?
He couldn't ride a bicycle, and he wouldn't try to learn a car. We tried to get him to drive a car, I don't know how many times, and if there was a car coming the other way toward us, 2 blocks away, he was up over the curb. We just couldn't get him to drive a car.
He couldn't get the sense of
He just didn't want to
feel
do
of
it, no, never did. So my mother learned how to drive, and she drove him around. In the
Well, she
later
learned to
stages.
drive when he was just didn't want to drive and wasn't going to learn, but
Well,
she did, and she would go to the grocery store and so forth.
Oh yeah.
Wherever they had to go.
Yeah. So that was kind of interesting, and then he died. My dad died in 1963, just a short time before President Kennedy got shot, and we all thought, "Geez, I'm glad he died before rather than after, because that would hurt him." Because he was from England, he from Portsmouth, England. He came over here in 1910 or 1912, something like that, and that would have hurt him badly. So anyway, we had to get a lady to come in and live with my mother because she was starting what I guess they would call Alzheimer's now. They used to call it hardening the arteries of the brain.
How old was she about that time, Irv?
Oh, she'd have been 60-something, probably 60.
That soon, that took place with her
Mm-hmm.
in the 60s.
Yeah, and she lived till 1974. Died in 1974, and now my own brother is gone. My mother and father are gone, so I'm the only one that's left in our side of the family.
You never had, other than Vern, you never had any other brothers or sisters?
No, it's just my brother.
So you're really the end of the line, the Prescotts, as far as going back. But you've got 2 boys and a daughter going forward.
Going forward, yeah.
And they have children.
Yeah.
Paul and Brenda have, 3 children?
2.
2. How many do
Ted and Susan have 3.
They have 3.
And Jack had 3.
Okay, so you've got quite a few
Oh
grandchildren.
yeah, about 8 or 9 grandchildren, great-grandchildren.
Great-grandchildren too.
And yeah, I got great-grandchildren. I can't keep track of them.
I'll bet. What about your military experience? Tell me a little bit about how you started and where you went to flight training and things of that nature. What kind of plane did you fly?
Well, I went, as I told you, in 1942 I decided I wanted to be a pilot. I knew I was going to get drafted sooner or later anyway, but I might as well enlist, get into something I'd like to be in. So I did enlist, and the day we left, February 22nd, 1943, got on a train in Chicago and went all the way to Fresno, California for basic training. That was supposed to last 9 weeks. It lasted 2 weeks, and the sergeant came around and says, "You're leaving tomorrow, pack your bags, make sure you keep your overcoat out and your heavy shoes." Okay, so we loaded up the next couple days and we shipped out to Grand Forks, North Dakota. And when we got to Grand Forks, North Dakota, it was 23 below zero. We got off there, I got off the train, and they had a couple of buses chartered from somewhere. They took us to the University of North Dakota.
That's in
And
Fargo?
Grand Forks.
Oh, Grand Forks.
And so we moved right into a fraternity house. The boys were all gone from the campuses.
They were all in the
They
military
were in the military somewhere, so they put us in them. So we lived in the sorority house, or fraternity house. And the Army let these university mothers who ran those houses stay there and keep doing it. So we had the best cooks in the world. We were eating just like the college boys were. It was very nice that we stayed there, except they took all the good furniture out and put double bunks in.
What about your stay there? And were you finishing your basic training there, or were you already started?
That's where we really were starting. That's where we really started. We attended class, we had to go to school, and we had to take public speaking, mathematics, English, history, and part in the morning. Then in the afternoon, they had some Piper Cubs.
Oh,
And,
this is where
and we actually went out and flew a plane with an instructor.
Okay.
And that I went there in March of 1943, and in September of that same year, left there and went to Santa Ana, California, to an air base there, and that's where we started more specific flight training. And I was stationed at Tulare, California, and I was stationed at Fresno for a while. And then it came to 1944, and we were at a little place called Garden City, and they brought in about 20 flight instructors from other bases, and they washed 70 of us out in one day.
How many of you were there to start with?
Oh, whatever. Well, it was a continuous thing, you know, you'd come and stay so long and leave.
Yeah.
But there were at least 300 that was there. They called out 70.
Almost a third of them were
Almost.
called
Yeah.
out.
And my problem was I didn't fly well enough on instruments.
That's why you got washed out.
I got washed out because I could not fly good enough on the instruments. I just couldn't seem to trust them. When they pulled that hood over your head, you couldn't see out. And all you could see were those
All the instruments.
I'd always wind up someplace I wasn't supposed to be. So I knew I had it coming, or I was going to get it. But oftentimes, if you didn't make it in the required number of hours, they would give you another 10 or 12 hours to try and make it. But I didn't. So I got out of that, and they gave us 3 choices. One was to go down to Amarillo, Texas, and get into the lower ball turret of the B-17 and be a gunner. And we heard a lot of bad stories about the lower ball turret. Didn't want that. And then they could go to Sioux Falls, South Dakota to radio school. Well, we've been listening to that dit stuff on their headphones for 3 or 4 years. I don't want to do any more of that. So the third option was to go to Denver, Colorado, to Lowry Field, and do armament control. Learn how to put the bombs and stuff on the planes. So we went there and went through that training, and when we got to the end of it, another little fellow and I, we were sitting in the lounge. PX called it. We just called it PX. We were sitting in the lounge, complaining that we were going to be shipped out by train the next day on Sunday afternoon to Amarillo, Texas, to go to lower ball train whether we wanted it or not. There were 300 of us going to be shipped out.
And you were all going to be gunners?
Well, that's what we were going there for.
Yeah.
So we were sitting there grousing about this, that we didn't want to go.
Yeah.
And maybe I shouldn't really be telling this, but I think it's far enough away that nobody's going to care anymore. A guy with a PFC stripe sitting close by heard us, and he came over. He said, you guys have shipping out tomorrow to Amarillo? Yeah. You don't want to go, it sounds like. I said, no, we don't want to go. He says, how'd you like to go to a fire control school? I looked at little Joe, my friend Joe Prescott, and I said, we got to be careful. We could get put in jail in a brig. But we're busted down to private already, and they can't barely bust us down much farther. So I said, well, what's this fire control school? It's over on Lowry Field 1, and you can go over there, and I'll have you enrolled Monday morning for $10.
He was scamming you guys.
You give me $10, and I'll get you over to armament or fire control school. So we looked at each other, and I said, well, how do you know where to get the money? We're not going to get paid for another month. So I'll know where you are.
He must have been a clerk or something.
Yeah, he probably a clerk, and he probably had some second Louis who was interested in making a few bucks.
A few bucks.
And so we each
pledged to give him $10.
Yeah, and we went over and we were in. And the next day we looked at the order sheet that we're about to go to Texas. There were 2 red lines through, Prescott and Prescocki. And we were now going over to Lowry Field 1 to fire control school. And that's how I got into the B-29. I didn't know it was that. I thought we were going to be firemen, to put out fires.
But that sounds like what it was all about, but that wasn't what it was.
No, it was fire control school, because the B-29 was a plane where you did not hold the gun in your hand.
No.
Like you did on a B-24, the B-17, B-26, where old John Wayne was standing there.
Yeah.
No, we didn't have that. These guns were all in turrets, and they were all controlled by a computer.
Way back then?
Way back then. That was the first really computer thing there was.
How long had the B-29 been in the military? Do you know?
It came in about, they started out in China in 19 44, something like that. But anyway, I got into it in 1945. Actual overseas. Went to the island of Saipan in 1945 and stayed there until 1946. I came home. I got home in 1946.
Well, was Saipan the island that the planes took off from that bombed both Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
No. There were two islands, and there were three islands for B-29. So it was Guam.
Guam.
That was the biggest one. That was the furthest one south, which made it the furthest away from Japan. Then came Tinian, and just 6 miles away from Tinian was Saipan. You could see.
You could see the islands.
You could see the island. You could see planes taking off from there, and so after the atomic bomb was dropped, some of us from Saipan were moved over to Tinian.
Tinian.
And what we didn't know is that the plane we were assigned to over there was only 3 parking places down from where the Enola Gay was. That was the Enola Gay was the one that went.
That was the one that bombed.
That was the one that bombed Nagasaki and
both
Hiroshima.
Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Yeah. So then there was not much for us to do really, but somebody got the idea, knew about this. Us kids didn't know anything about it. They had a lot of American prisoners of war in Japan, prison camps.
Oh yeah.
And they decided that we would fly supplies up to those camps, if you could find them. And they apparently got through the Swiss government somehow, maps of where those camps were within about 50 miles. So what would happen, we would load the plane up, and the front bomb bay would have all these supplies in them. The back bomb bay would have 1,300 or 7,000 gallons of gasoline back there to go. And that's what we did. We flew there and dropped these by parachute. And the camps were marked. The guys had gotten rocks and painted it with whitewash so you could tell it was a camp. We came down to 700 feet and dropped these supplies that were in 55-gallon oil drums that were welded together. And then they could get those supplies. They had medicine, food, clothing, whatever the Army would send.
Even a case of beer or so.
Well, we helped that out. We bought some cases of beer and had them put a parachute out. And we put our name and address on there, and along about end of November, we'd start getting little postcards from these guys that now have been freed, and we're going home saying thanks for all the supplies, but mostly for the beer. It was cold.
That's funny.
So we did that, and I think one of the things that impressed me more than anything about the war, because I never had anybody shoot at me.
No, you
I
wouldn't.
never really had anybody shoot at me, except one guy. And he was a Navy pilot and decided to take a poke at that old B-29 flying along at 280 miles an hour when he could dive bomb you at 400 miles an hour. And,
I'll bet he got court-martialed if he did that.
well, he did.
I'll bet.
I shot him.
You shot him? What do you mean you shot his plane?
Yeah.
Did he go down?
No.
No.
I put 2 holes in his tail.
What happened because of that? To you? Anything?
No. Well, we had to go to a big hearing.
Yeah.
We were on our way. We were going to land at Iwo Jima to get gas. That was a big thing. Iwo Jima was wonderful for all of the pilots.
Returning pilots.
Because you could stop there for gasoline. But we were in the daytime, and this guy was off of a Navy, U.S. Navy carrier, up on a training mission, I suppose. He saw this B-29 and I'll go down. Well, we were always taught, all these fighter planes, the only way they could shoot you is be pointing at you, because the guns are in the wings.
Yeah.
And I looked up out of my chair. I was sitting in my 360-degree chair, and here comes this plane right at us out of the sky, full tilt. So I just turned on my gun sight, and when I got him in the ring, is he had a gun sight that went like this when you turn the handle, and you get your plane in there and then push the firing button, you'd hit him.
There was no doubt you were going to hit him
Yeah.
if you were in that,
If you got him in there.
that range.
Yeah. The computer figured all the windage and how fast you were going and how fast he was coming. So
Was he in radio contact with the pilot of the plane that you were on? There was no communication.
no,
He was just playing games.
playing games.
Well,
He wasn't going to shoot us, but we didn't know that.
no, because
We had no way of knowing it.
no, you weren't in communication.
No, so I just gave him a little burst, and the pilot went, "Where the hell fired the gun?"
You didn't get in trouble, did you, particularly?
No,
Were there anybody taking camera pictures of this plane doing what he did? I mean, that wasn't something, you didn't have
No.
cameras on your,
we did have a camera. It was in the floor of the plane for taking pictures down.
down.
Yeah,
Well, you've had some interesting experiences in the military.
so that was interesting.
Tell me a little bit about what happened when you came back to Ludington to teach school, and you had choirs that went to Chicago, and what experience that was, because I told you I have some pictures of the group went to Bob Pierce's whatever that was called.
Chicago Temple.
Chicago Temple,
Mm-hmm.
and it shows the inside of it and some of the kids that were with you and so forth. I don't know if you were in the picture, but I'll find it, and I'm going to utilize that in something.
I don't have any pictures of me with me in it there. No.
I think
The
George
minister,
Conkle-
the minister was a guy named Charles Goff, and Charles Goff was a Methodist minister, and that's Methodist, and Epworth Heights is Methodist. Out here, Epworth Heights is a Methodist organization.
was that Bob Goff related?
Charlie Goff had
Charlie.
the best cottage out there up on a high hill. And the only way I got to know him at all was I had the high school choir down at the Stearns Hotel for a ladies' night something. And it was a Rotary Club. Charlie Goff belonged to a Rotary Club in Chicago, and he belonged to a Rotary Club here. And he was sitting in the front row with the guests, and I'm directing the choir. Well, he looked at me and I said, "Jesus, I know that guy from somewhere," because I've been singing in the temple first,
Yeah.
and right after the war. And so I said to him, "I'd like to talk to you a little bit." I said, "I'd like to bring this choir to Chicago." He said, "Well, we don't have a choir loft. We just have a quartet." I said, we would need to be in the front. You got a big balcony. Give us 75 seats in the front of the balcony, and we'll sing from there. We don't need the organ or anything. We'll sing a cappella. So we did that for 13 years in a row,
Did you really?
and then Bill McLean took it for a couple more years after that.
How'd you raise money to finance the trip?
We made phonograph records that we sold. We made, of course, you had to have car washes and spaghetti dinners, and there were three men in town. One of them was Louis Schauer, I forget who the other two were, that came to me and said, "If you have any kid who can't go because of the money," they all had a little money for themselves,
Oh, sure.
he said, "just let us know." I got money for 3 different kids over all those years, and each one of the kids paid that person back.
Really?
Yeah,
Talk about an honor system.
they paid him back at the end. Yeah, Louis Schauer was one of those guys.
Louis
See,
was-
Louis Schauer was at Pearl Harbor in the service.
He was there, yeah, when they bombed Pearl Harbor.
That's what I'm saying.
He was
So,
in the Navy, I think, wasn't he?
yeah, so Louis Schauer was a pretty nice guy for kids, you know, and things
Yeah.
that needed help.
Well, you've had some interesting experiences. I know there are more stories, but for the time being, we'll leave it here. And I'm going to download this to my computer, and at some point in time, I'll bring it over and show it to you.
Okay.
And if we want to proceed, we'll pick out other things that have happened to you, as far as work, as far as your children, and far what their advancements have been, and so forth. And we'll just continue it. And
Well-
another thing I'd like to know too, do you have any early pictures of yourself and Alice when you were young people? You
Well,
know,
probably I do, yeah.
if you can find me a few of those, I'd like to
Yeah,
scan them.
I have some pictures, when we had this, 1955, when we had our year centennial here.
Oh, yeah.
A picture of Louis Shower, not Louis Shower, but Louis,
Carmouche?
Carmouche.
Down Democrat.
He was in the Lions Club.
Okay.
And the Lions Club had a great big float with a lion on it.
Mm-hmm.
And my son Jack was about 3 years old, 2 years old or whatever. And Louis Carmouche had him up on the lion in his parade, and I took a picture of that. I have that picture
So
somewhere.
if you can find me a few pictures, I'd like to have some of them to scan. So.
Well, I'll have to really hunt. They were all over the place.